What's up, guys? I'm Jeremy, Red 9 Gearhead here on the YouTube. So I made this video a few weeks ago, and after posting it and my family making fun of me, go figure, I decided it's probably best to go ahead and redo it. My lighting was terrible and I really just kind of rambled on and on. So I figured I'd do a little better job on the second time around. I'd try and speed things up a little bit. That way you guys can get the information that hopefully you're looking for. So anyway, long story short, I've spent the last couple of years building this square body behind me. The truck was in horrible shape when we got it, but just like everything that you buy off the internet, you know, it had a fresh motor in it. Well, to be quite frank, it runs great. I did a little bit of work to it. Alternator, power steering pumps, a new carburetor, you know, reinstalled the intake manifold because it was leaking real bad, but spent the majority of my time doing a pile of body work, going over the whole suspension, the frame, blasting, painting, just the whole deal. We'll get into that another day. But I didn't really take the time and pull the engine, really tear it down, see what exactly we're working with, or do any kind of performance parts to it. So that's where we're at now. As I was doing all my research, I kept coming up against this AFR 265 head. There's a lot of information out there from the guys that do dyno tests that help me understand that these were going to help me get the power I was looking for in the range I was looking for. They tend to do really well on the low and mid-range power, not a super high flow, big horsepower head, but something that's really going to be a bit better suited for a big truck with 40-inch tires. Although there was a pile of information out there on the dyno tests, what kind of numbers I could expect, there wasn't a video or any real information from guys out there as far as what I could expect when I opened the box. In other words, were they going to require a bunch of additional work on my part before I actually could bolt them to the block? So I figured I'd go ahead and take a few minutes, put a video together for you guys just in case you've got the same questions I had, and hopefully make life a little easier on you when making a decision to bite off on a big purchase. So first off, if they can't get to you in decent shape, then it's not worth fooling with. I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with the way they came packaged. The cardboard box they sent them to me in is probably the heaviest box I've seen. It's pretty stout. So the heads came bolted to a piece of 3/4 inch plywood with a big heavy chunk of foam on it. And I was really pleased to see that, largely because in research, I found that there are some companies that essentially just put heads in a cardboard box and they're kind of free to move around. And we all know how reliable these shipping companies can be. So that was kind of scary to think that might be what I was dealing with when they got to the door. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. I helped the fella get him out of the truck, and the box showed up here in really good shape. So I'm pretty pleased to report that, you know, that's they weren't lacking there. They spent some time making sure they're going to get to you in decent shape. So with that silly part out of the way, I suppose we can kind of get in here and get a better look at the heads themselves. So, of course, a lot of us are going to have questions about the machine work. You know, what kind of condition is the casting in when it shows up? Is there a pile of flash? Is there, you know, any issues as far as the machine work is concerned? Now, I have to say there's definitely a lot of burrs. It's going to take a little bit of time for me to go through, see if I can get out of the light, for me to go through and clean things up. I wouldn't say that it's an absolute must, but I mean, hell, they're out of the truck. So it just kind of makes sense to go through and do that. The casting itself really seems to be in relatively decent shape. Here in a second, I'll pull this over and show you some of the water jackets that have got some kind of Donagers in there, man. They're a little rough. So I don't know that it would necessarily create any issues for us as far as cooling is concerned. But I mean, they're right here. So it kind of makes sense to spend a few minutes with a burr and get them all cleaned up as best we can. So here's one of the water passages. My light's not really gonna do it justice. Obviously you can see the original, or the very beginning of the inlet there, you can see a little bit of casting slag, and it's a little rough. But down in there is a bit of a different story. So they get a little wonky down inside the passageways. That shot kind of shows you what I'm talking about. So I will spend a little bit of time, get in there with a sander and kind of smooth things out a little bit. Also, I notice here on the intake runners that their partial CNC port didn't exactly clean up all the rough casting. I mean, it's pretty minimal, but it's definitely the case. There's definitely a bit of that there, so I will go through and clean that up. So upon inspection, it looks like all the keepers are in there nice and tight. There's not really any issue as far as as I can tell at least, with the valve installation. It looks like everything's in pretty good condition. I did read a handful of horror stories. I think those were on some of the Edelbrock Street Performer or Street Series heads. But thankfully these really seem to be in pretty good condition as far as that's concerned. I've got a Howard's cam that I intend to put in this, and the kit came with lifters. I did buy their recommended spring kit, so all this stuff's going to come out, at which point I'll check the valve job and make sure that everything's nice and tidy in there. I may even just go ahead and lap them just for due diligence sake. You know, as I keep saying, just makes sense to go through and do that. Well, they're sitting here on the bench. So all in all, as far as machine work is concerned, I'm really pretty pleased with them. I can't say that I've got any big concerns. You know, probably an hour or so with some sandpaper and a small deburr tool, and I'll be able to take care of some of this stuff that I've mentioned. Let me see if I can kind of get you set up here and see if we can get a decent shot of the combustion chambers. So again, as I was doing all my research, I definitely found some of the companies out there haven't done the best job of deburring the combustion chambers. Spark plug holes that had big hunks of big burrs or flash hanging off of them, and thankfully we don't really have any of that here. It does look like they spent a little bit of time to go through and detail the combustion chambers, so I'm pleased with that. It looks like the lighting's a little tough, but you can kind of see some of the roughness in that water passage that I was referring to earlier. It does appear to be a little screwy. So I am just now actually noticing a pretty big heavy bit of casting flash on the bottom of that. Yeah, it's really not picking it up very well here on the... There we go. Pretty novice here with the camera, bear with me. But anyway, I'll definitely be getting in there and cleaning that all up. So, I mean, I don't know that I would say that they're 100% bolt on ready. But thankfully, it doesn't appear that I'm going to have just a abundant amount of work to try and get these things in a condition where I can get them bolted on the engine. So, I mean, all in all, guys, I'm just kind of a motorhead in his garage here, so I wouldn't necessarily say that I possess the experience with a lot of this stuff that some guys will, but you know, just novice guy out here working in his garage. I'm pretty happy with what we've got here. I will post up some videos as I go through and do the cleanup work on them, sand some of the ports, and go through and check all the valves, make sure that the valve job is pretty reasonable, and reinstall all the new springs and keepers and everything in there. But all in all, I'm pretty pleased with what showed up at the door. You know, these things aren't cheap, so it's nice to know that most of the machine work really does look pretty good. And I mean, a guy probably could just bolt these on, but it doesn't make a great deal of sense to me to do that since they're sitting here on the bench. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes to listen to me ramble. But hey, if you're a hot rod guy or a builder like me, you probably know what it's like to get out on the road and have some kind of silly little problem with your rig, whether it be a fuel related issue, vacuum related issue, something electrical. For these reasons, I've put together the Hot Rod Rescue Kit. You can find it at the hotrodrescuekit.com, as seen on the poster here behind me. This is basically a bag full of tools and parts that are liable to get you out of just about 95% of the headaches that you might bump into while you're out enjoying your rig on a nice Sunday afternoon. You know, it's really difficult to rewire a cooling fan with one flathead screwdriver and a pocket knife. So bag full of stuff behind your seat or in the trunk probably save you from a rough afternoon with the wife. So hey, if you're interested in something like that, check it out, hotrodrescuekit.com. I've also going to put together some videos on here for you guys so you can see exactly what's in the kit, what you can expect. I spent several months really going over this stuff, making sure it's got decent quality tools in here that are going to get you out of jam, and some things you probably wouldn't even expect to find in there. So hey, if you got a quick second, I'd appreciate if you give me a like, maybe a follow. Getting ready to jerk the engine out of this truck. Should be a blast. And I got 3 more trucks sitting out back and a Jeep that are coming in as soon as I can get this pig out of the way. So I appreciate your time. Let me know what you think. All the comments are greatly appreciated. You guys take care.